Welcome everyone, it's your host, Danny Haiphong. I wanted to comment on the 2024 US election because I have to say that it has huge implications for geopolitics and world developments now and to come. I'm not going to talk too much about how the vote shook out in this election. There are many reasons why Kamala Harris was blown out in the way she was, and there are a lot of valid truths to those reasons that we don't have to necessarily get into here. But the debates will rage on, and liberals and neoliberals and neocons will lose their minds. They will blame everybody but themselves. They will blame women, white women now. They will blame black men. They will blame Jill Stein. They will blame Russia. They will blame essentially everybody who decided that Kamala Harris was not their choice. And many people decided Kamala Harris was not their choice because she received 15 million fewer votes than Joe Biden did in 2020, including in key areas like Dearborn, Michigan, which she failed to campaign in. So there are many reasons why Kamala Harris lost. They're going to also blame the identity politics issue. Whatever truth exists in the hesitancy of people to vote for the first woman of color president, let's be honest, this election was not unwinnable, and Kamala Harris lost the election. That is first and foremost. We cannot talk about how this election turned out without talking about first and foremost Kamala Harris losing the election, not based on something she couldn't control, but based on things she could control. Or could she? And now this is the big reason why I wanted to talk to you today. It's because geopolitics and global developments, we often talk about them on this channel as being centered in these wars of aggression, centered in Ukraine, NATO's aggression toward Russia, centered in West Asia, US and Israeli aggression toward Palestine, toward Iran, toward Lebanon, and toward all the fronts in West Asia, aggression toward China, or even the DPRK, but mostly toward China as the US works up toward great power competition and a great power conflagration there. Geopolitics played a huge role in Kamala Harris's loss and Donald Trump's victory. For one, Gaza dismantled and destroyed Kamala Harris's chances. We have to be honest here. So many people in the United States were turned off by Kamala Harris's stance on the Palestine question. Palestinian people were thrown under the bus. The way she talked about Palestine, the way she talked about the genocide, the fact that she refused to say she was going to end this war. Every time she mentioned supposedly wanting to end this war, she would always say so on the basis of Israeli interests, saying that she was going to free the hostages. Israel's, by the way, destroying most of the prisoners of war, but that's a whole other story. She would always paint it from the Israeli perspective. This made her look like a complete and utter servant of Israeli interests, even though we all know that the United States backs Israel not because it wants to serve Israel, but because it wants to serve itself in that region, using Israel so that the United States can maintain its dominance in the region, even if that is backfiring at the moment. That is the irrational logic of empire, of the neocons' drive toward endless war. But the point here is that Gaza sunk her campaign. The fact that she has presided over 200,000 Palestinian deaths, that more mass murder is to come, that the people of Lebanon are now catching hell from Israeli fire, over 3,000 people dead, million plus displaced. The fact that we are so close to a regional war which will explode into World War III with Iran. This only compounds on top of how the United States is mired in Ukraine, has lost that war to Russia. That war has cost nearly $200 billion US worth in weapons and aid to Ukraine. The fact that all of this has occurred while the United States' military budget is now over $1 trillion US from what we know, and of course trillions more from what is not picked up in those failed audits. All of this on top of the fact that the United States is a declining empire that is rotting from within. Come to the United States, you see the homelessness, you see the decrepit infrastructure, you see the incredibly high cost of living in most places in the United States. Your wages are either low or your cost of living is too high, or you're experiencing both. And this is the case for more than half of the United States. And this isn't even to mention other issues like mass surveillance. Corporate media is becoming more and more invested in censorship. Truth tellers all across YouTube and other areas are being suppressed for simply speaking out on the genocide in Gaza, on the war of lies in Ukraine. We are closer to a nuclear war than we've been in many generations. This is all on top of the declining empire that's rotting from within. So Kamala Harris lost this race because Kamala Harris exemplified this decline. I've often said that Joe Biden is the walking embodiment of the complete collapse of the American empire, that his own physiological decline and his inability to run the empire actually is emblematic of how outstretched and how outdated and how outmoded this system has become, that it is only a burden and a weight on humanity. Joe Biden, when he couldn't speak, when he couldn't get up to the podium, when it was obvious that everyone is doing his job for him, that is really a microcosm of what really is happening in the US political and economic system. That it is elites who control it, and Joe Biden was just such an extreme version of what that looks like. Now, Kamala Harris is like this in a different sense. She couldn't even talk in this campaign. She didn't want to take interviews with Joe Rogan. She didn't want to speak to the people. She didn't even speak to Howard University, to her supporters, when it was clear that she lost. It was her who should have given the concession speech, but she didn't do it. She actually spoke so little in this campaign. It is a surprise that anyone who went to the polls actually knew what Kamala Harris stood for. We were supposed to vote for Kamala Harris based on vibes. We were supposed to vote for Kamala Harris based on how she looked and what she represented. But really, Kamala Harris was nothing but a Hillary Clinton 2.0 in many respects, much worse of a politician than Hillary Clinton, and that says a lot because Hillary Clinton showed just how inept, inadequate, and unfit she was to run for political office after being inside of the neocon foreign policy establishment blob as well as the US political class for decades, running up a record that would make the most oppressive and exploitative dictators around the world look like child's play. So the fact that Kamala Harris represented something even more grotesque than this, now with a genocide on her resume, why should we be surprised that she lost? It was only the Western corporate media that had us believe that Kamala Harris was riding this magic carpet toward victory, but that was never going to be the case. And geopolitics have sunk Kamala Harris, and they're sinking the US political system. This system, so dependent upon war, is driving humanity into the abyss, and humanity is waking up. The world sees what is going on. The multipolar world that's developing out of the BRICS summit, led by China, led by Russia, led by Iran, led by these forces of resistance, they are only going to get stronger because they see what's happening. They know that Donald Trump is not necessarily going to change anything. They know that Donald Trump is a red herring. They know that Donald Trump doesn't control things. They know that even if he did control things, Donald Trump doesn't necessarily have the most glowing record when it comes to issues of diplomacy and peace. Let us be honest, it's a very mixed record, but at least it's a mixed record when you look at it on its face. But where it is mixed, where it falls on the side of war, it is incredibly damaging. Donald Trump is not a dove. Donald Trump is not a savior. The Republican Party is the Republican Party. It is part of the duopoly. It is a neocon foreign policy establishment think tank. The sirens should tell you that you should be alarmed by Donald Trump being president of the United States because he sits in the Oval Office. He has an ideology. He has a policy initiative. He has a platform that he is going to carry out at the behest of his donors and the people that control him. Wink, wink, Sheldon Adelson. Wink, wink, Miriam Adelson. these forces that paid him to be there are going to exert maximum pressure for him to do what they want. And that means we should expect that West Asia in particular is going to explode under his presidency. He is going to place a great amount of focus on this arena of geopolitics, and war is very much on the way. That is, of course, unless there is maximum political and popular pressure to avoid this. And of course, there are some objective conditions there. Any kind of war with Iran, for example, would dismantle and destroy the global economy given the energy question. But we shouldn't underestimate the irrationality and the inability for the American empire to rein in its own forces. Of course, the neocon foreign policy establishment is going to panic. They're going to panic hard for a while because they believe that Donald Trump will end the war in Ukraine. For me, I do not know the answer to this question. Perhaps Donald Trump is sincere and he will roll back the worst excesses of this incredibly dangerous war that the United States is leading against Russia. But it is also very possible, given his track record over the period of 2016 to 2020, that relations with Russia will worsen. Perhaps the Ukraine conflict will be rolled back and we will find the United States find other areas and means to intensify its aggression toward Russia. Or perhaps the Ukraine conflict will continue and Donald Trump will roll back his promises. After all, Donald Trump now is riding actually on a magic carpet of complete and utter legitimacy, at least in American politics terms. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to U.S. politics, truly, there really is no legitimacy because it is a corrupt system. It is one that is bankrupt. It is one that is bought and paid for. And it is also one that works in a particular way that is just inherently unjust and unfair to the common people, to the ordinary person. That is not democracy. That is not representative of the interests of the people when you have corporations and banks and military contractors control the whole damn thing. But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump right now has completely won in a landslide. The Republican Party has swept the chambers and the branches of U.S. government, which will allow Donald Trump to essentially do what Donald Trump wants to do. And it is unclear whether Donald Trump and the GOP at large actually wants to end the war in Ukraine. All we have are words, and there are no words that a U.S. politician speaks that we should be bound to respect. And why is that? Because the United States, it may not be exceptional. American exceptionalism may be a lie, but what it is exceptional at is having political leadership that lies. It is an empire of lies. So we cannot believe the words out of the mouth of someone like Donald Trump, just like we cannot believe the words out of the mouth of anyone who runs for the presidency of the United States in the duopoly. But nonetheless, there are pressures to end the conflict in Ukraine, and Donald Trump will be looking for a foreign policy signature. No change happens anywhere without a demand. People have to demand things. People have to work for things. People have to ensure that things happen. It's not the politicians and it's not the elites that are going to sit back and grant the wishes of what most ordinary people want, which is fewer wars, less war, maybe no war in Ukraine, and having that money diverted toward people's needs. No, don't even expect the latter half. But if you're even going to get the first half of that equation, it is going to take immense pressure. Now that pressure has been building up because people like yourself who are watching this channel have been most interested not just in the details of something like the Ukraine conflict, but you've been interested in what will be the outcome. And it is quite clear that most people want to see a just resolution to this. They want to see Russia's sovereignty protected. They want to see the violence and the war stop. And they want to see a diplomatic solution to this that is truly just. The same goes for Palestine. People want to see the Palestinian people have justice, real justice, not just a slap on Israel's wrist so it can continue on doing this at some other point, or where it just slightly reduces what it's doing. No, people want to see this stop, and they want to see the Palestinian people have their rights, especially their right to self-determination, respected. People don't want to see war anymore. There is no function for war within the development and the progress of humanity. The only function that war serves now is to enrich the elites and the neocons and the careers that they occupy that are funded and buttressed by the wealth and the influence and the power of these elites that sit on Wall Street, that sit in the banks, that sit in the executive chambers and boardrooms of BlackRock and Vanguard and these major monopolies. These are the people who are making decisions on our behalf. These are the people who are driving geopolitical conflict. It's not Russia, it's not China, it is not these so-called boogie nations, these boogeymen nations that we are told in Cold War 2.0 fashion are the problem. No, those nations are actually seeking peace. Those nations are sounding the alarm and the sirens that you may hear in the background. They are sounding the alarm for peace and multipolarity. They want an international financial and political and diplomatic arena that they can operate under as equals with the United States. The US has to become a normal country. Under Donald Trump, it is unlikely to do that. Donald Trump, for all of his bluster about peace, is also what we call an America First politician. Some people may interpret that as, no, he's all about America's needs and America's needs. I interpret that as he wants to see the United States on top. If you believe that the United States being on top is preferable, then more research, more study is needed on what that really means. What that means is that the United States is going to be the exceptional country, meaning it stands above other countries and other nations, and not in the ways that you might want it to. You might want the United States to stand above all other countries in terms of development, in terms of rapid progress, in terms of being able to meet needs for the people, in terms of being able to improve standards of living for the people, in terms of having leadership over issues that matter to humanity, whatever that may be, diplomacy, peace, infrastructure development, environmental concerns, whatever you believe are important global issues we need to cooperate around. You may think, oh, well, the United States is on top, and it's on top in America First fashion, then it can play a leading role in the world. No, that's not what it means. What it means is that the United States is on top as it is currently constituted, the social order, political order, the economic order that is currently constituted here. And that means that the governing of these elites, their interests, their priorities stands above all other people, stands above all other peoples of the world, all of the nations of the world. And that means just a variant of the same system that we talk about over and over and over again of empire on this channel. So this is the reality. The reality is that the meltdown is here. Liberals are going to lose their minds. We're going to see panic and pandemonium about Donald Trump's second term. But the fact of the matter is that the system remains the same. And that system guarantees that we will see escalation somewhere. We will see that $1 trillion plus military albatross be deployed, be sent over, be targeting somewhere along this world map of confrontation. And it means that all of that is to serve the very people that got Donald Trump elected and the very people that tried to elect Kamala Harris. They are not in conflict with each other. Do not make a mistake about that. They are not in conflict with each other. They are going to get some version of what they want out of this election. And it is up to us to keep our attention and our awareness on this fact so that we can be just as vigilant, just as strongly opposed to the empire, to the endless war regime. And that will then lead us to the type of work, the type of commitments, the type of information, and the type of action we need to take to stop all of this and to build a better world. This was your host, Haiphong. I hope you enjoyed this election reaction. I will see you all again very soon. Peace out.